Hello, Thomas from Medieval Review here at Longpoint 2017, and I am at the Black Armoury booth with Anthony Rischard.
Pleasure.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm actually really excited to see you guys here, specifically because of the jacket, but we'll get to that in a moment. And I'm also seeing a lot of really interesting things appearing on the table here. In fact, things that just appeared today. And so I'm going to want to talk a bit about that. But first, I'd like to just kind of ask you to talk a little bit about Black Armoury and what you guys are doing for the HEMA community and what your kind of goal and purpose is.
Okay, well, Black Armoury has been around for just under 2 years now. We're based in France. We are a primarily European company. My business partner Thomas Lobo and I started Black Armoury like a lot of HEMA startups do because we found that there were some holes in the equipment market. And we wanted to do some things primarily for our own clubs. You know, I practice. Thomas is a competitor and instructor, and we wanted to make a jacket. That's pretty much where it started.
Okay.
We wanted to make a jacket because Thomas in competition was getting really annoyed with getting stuck here and doing aux like this. So we wanted something with mobility, and then in the design process we ended up saying, hey, maybe we can do something to get that mask jacket interface and protection for the neck a little bit better. So we basically went into designing a jacket. Then we decided that it was necessary to finance developing a jacket. So we decided to open a boutique, a shop, to resell Spes, PBT, and other brands, and Red Dragon. From there, it just sort of grew. Students started saying, yeah, well, what about feathers? Can you get us feathers? Yeah, sure, we can get you feathers. Now, my personal interest in HEMA is actually a lot more on the research side than on the practicing side. I mean, obviously, I love to play around with the sword, and I go to classes and do that. My thing is weapons research. I've been following what you're doing with the interviews with Peter Johnson with great interest, obviously, and Peter and I are in contact also on the forums and stuff. So designing weapons, designing feathers, we actually have some. We won't talk about it now, but in the next few months we'll be talking about feathers. Some really interesting things going on there. So steel lines. We also have, well, actually we sold the last one here on the stand yesterday, but we're working very closely with Jersey over at Silk Fencing for his synthetics, to help him get those really excellent synthetics up to production speed. So we're carrying those, and non-sword weapons are something that we're very interested in developing as well. So we've got a line of synthetics for pole arms at the moment that we're working up.
And that's really important. I can say, having tried to go find synthetics that are accurate to the types of things that you might want to find, it's kind of have to cobble together with various pieces that from other manufacturers, and they've never really gone out and tried to just make a whole set, a whole piece. And it's really unfortunate that we're doing this interview on like the last day, because you've sold out of a lot of the things that were actually pretty interesting. You mentioned the synthetic swords, and you and I talked about that yesterday, just in passing. I kind of wish we had those here to talk about. Yep. Oh well. And you talked a bit about the innovation side, and you mentioned something that we're going to keep a secret, which is sad. However, maybe I did record that that session a couple days ago talking about faders, and if the researchers who are all involved in that give the thumbs up, that will actually get published. At least that video that I recorded will be published. The information that they are working on, I'm sure, is future publication. And I know you were there, and you were very astutely interested in what was going on with those conversations, I think, because of that.
Let's say that 3 hours of conversation over coffee occurred just after that session, and obviously you and I both know that they prefer we not talk about it in too much detail right now, but there's some very interesting things in the works for let's say over the next year.
Yeah, yeah. And it kind of speaks a little bit to one of the key tenets. So I told you a second ago, before we started the interview, I do my research. So I went onto the website, looked up kind of the mission statement, as it were. One of the key pillars, as it were, is innovation.
Yes.
And sometimes innovation is this spark of brilliance, and sometimes it's like the most obvious thing in the world. The jacket is a great example of this. When the Black Armoury jacket hit the market for the first time, and everyone was seeing. It's funny, you mentioned all the other aspects, but yet it kind of got overshadowed by the collar design.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic idea, and it's like, why has no one thought to do that up to this point? And maybe it's because, you know, we're looking at historical models of gambesons, and we're modeling a lot based on that even today, or modern fencing jackets with their kind of specific use cases. But with a HEMA mindset kind of driving the innovation, it's a really interesting thing. And I'm sitting right here. In front of me is a saddle.
That is a saddle.
So here's a piece of innovation right here.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the saddle in just a minute, but let me just back up just to what you were just saying. Innovation is always driven by cooperation, all right? You can't innovate in a corner somewhere. I mean, the myth of the mad scientist who just has an idea and then makes it. So it's all about relationships and building things and going back and forth. And the saddle came out of that. The jacket came out of that. I mean, you know, we didn't just go, bing, you know, this is it. A lot of conversation in our club and with friends and people. So one of the things that we do is a lot of bridge building. All right, that's one of the reasons we're here in the U.S. Right now, because events like Longpoint are that laboratory, and that's really vital because it fosters what we like to call co-opetition. All right, and co-opetition is, for the last 30 years, has been one of my favorite words. It's the reason why we are able to make our own jacket and also sell Spes, PPT, Neyman. We're hoping to get Gargidoni on because they're doing great stuff as well. You know, there's room for all of us as long as we're not ripping stuff off from each other, and we're just allowing that to cross-pollinate and do neat stuff. So the saddle is the Archem saddle. Now Archem is ARCEM, is the citadel in Latin, is one of our sub brands that we're going to be developing, and the saddle was developed in cooperation, not co-opetition this time, with HEMS, whose logo I'll send you as well, maybe, because they're doing some really very interesting stuff with the equestrian HEMA. All right, they've just spent a bunch of time in Pittsburgh doing workshops with for equestrian and stuff, and so we co-designed this saddle, which is, you know, as you were saying, the first and for the moment the only specifically made for HEMA saddle. This is based off of a 16th century Spanish war saddle. All right. Again, taking into account the needs of HEMA balanced with the historical source. All right. So from a historical perspective and from a use perspective, when you're in the saddle, this is a 16th century saddle, and the people who have been using it have been saying, wow, I've never been able to feel the horse as much under me as with a historical saddle, and that's fantastic, and that's vital, because the style of riding that you're doing when you're doing combat riding is the whole be one with the horse. You have to do it. So from a use perspective, there's that. What are the needs of HEMA? The vast majority of equestrian HEMA practitioners do not and are not going to own a horse. They can't. It's just too expensive, right? So this saddle is going to have to wander around with the rider as opposed to being attributed to a specific horse, right? So we have, and all of this will be documented in videos, how to adjust it for the horse and whatnot, but essentially this saddle is entirely adjustable, all right? The angle of the cushions, the spread of the cushions, all of these fitting details allow us to put this, now I don't speak pounds and ounces unfortunately, but people will do the mental translation. We've fit this saddle onto horses going anywhere from 400 to 900 kilos.
Okay.
That's a very big spread. The other thing that we're finding is that American horses and European horses are quite different. Just in the shape of the back, the width, the girth. And we've learned, or the HEMS people have learned, to adjust these things, and so that's fantastic. So again, getting equipment onto the market that allows us to develop what we've been doing for a long time, the longsword and whatever, but also branch HEMA out into other branches of historical martial arts.
Yeah, certainly I wouldn't say lesser known. I think people are aware that it exists, but the lesser practiced. And this gives that opportunity for it to become more accessible. Absolutely. In a lot of ways.
Lesser practiced, in part for the same reason that a lot of our activities are sometimes lesser practiced: cost.
Yeah.
Cost and availability of equipment. Why is harness fechten, armored fighting, not as dominant as it could or as it should be? Because it's bloody expensive. because armor is bloody expensive. Top secret project number 2. Armored fighting is currently expensive. We're going to help change that.
I'll be curious to see what that looks like. So going back to the idea of the co-opetition, I'm going to have to co-opetition.
Yep.
Co-opetition. It's a new word that I'm going to try to put in my lexicon. One of the things that I talked about in my video series on sword dynamics, as well as when it first came out in the book, The Sword, Form, and Thought, yes, and I talked a lot about it, is I kept saying manufacturers and producers and resellers need to start using agility charts as a way of communicating what their products can do. And I said, no one's doing it. And now I have to eat crow, because from the very beginning, you guys were actually doing that. I was unaware it's actually there. You're going to probably send me links or pictures of this so I can put it on this video. But yeah, agility charts, things that speak to how these things work. It's basically a data sheet on the weapon, and that's a brave thing to do in a lot of ways, because it gives a lot of insight into the design and all that. But like you said, that's not necessarily always the purpose. That ability to help cross-pollinate and hold other companies accountable to making good items, or helping to bring them up to a level that then helps drive you guys to more innovation, can be a really good thing. It's a very unique perspective to take on a business model, but I think it's the right one to take, not only for the business model, but also for HEMA as a community, as a group of like-minded people.
We are people with families, with all the other stuff that goes with being people. So we obviously need to make a living. I mean, the commercial aspect of things is important. The commercial aspect of things is what allows us to be able to do this full time. Because that's the other thing, is we do this full time. This is our business. This is our job. All right. But philosophically, this is not about the money. It's about making a living. But it's not about the money. It is a passion, and it is about working with the community. I mean, Black Armoury does a lot of other things than just sell stuff. It does a lot of other things than just make stuff, design stuff. We are developing a Black Armoury's Instructor Program to help instructors on both sides of the Atlantic cross-pollinate and hopefully set up more workshops, short-term workshops. Because the big events we have, I mean, they're great, and we do that. But getting U.S. instructors over to Europe to do the 3 or 4 day workshop, and how do we build the model to be able to finance that and help them get over and whatnot, and vice versa, get more European instructors to hold workshops here and really get that kind of thing going. So that's something that we're actively working on there. We have actively worked on developing a network of clubs in our region of France. We now have 96 members in our clubs, and that is still growing. We're very, very closely involved with the French HEMA Federation. Thomas is on the board of directors of the French Federation, and is in charge of developing the instructor training program for the French Federation. So the whole learning aspect of things and the whole teaching aspect of things is something that we're very, very interested in. Some people say, well, isn't that a fine line to walk, to be as involved in developing the community as you are and also selling stuff? Not really, because HEMA is HEMA, and HEMA practitioners are HEMA practitioners. And if we stray an inch from that line, we know it. We know it because
get the immediate feedback.
Because somebody or somebodies or 20 somebodies are grabbing us by the collar and saying, "Hey, no." And from time to time, obviously, not intentionally, but sometimes there's been a little bit of a gray area. Primarily with things like the club, for example. It's like, well, hey, let's sell 10 swords to the club. Well, let's see. You're vice president of the club. You're running the business. So no, obviously, we stepped completely out of that decision. We let the rest of the club members or the board members make the decisions, and then we go from there. So yeah, it's just exciting. It's just really exciting. It's really exciting to be here in the U.S.
The passion is evident, right? And that's great. I hope that's the highest compliment I could pay. I'm sure I could try to pay a higher one, but it is evident. And I really appreciate that you guys bring that, because we need more of that. And I think we see a lot of that from the more HEMA-specific vendors,
Yes.
but it's something that always needs to be cultivated, because as HEMA grows, there's always going to be that other tug in the other direction that says, well, make this more about the sport, make it more about the money, right? For anyone who was here and got to listen to Jake Norwood's kind of keynote speech at the dinner, which go talk to Jake if you want to know what he talked about, but talking about the importance of how HEMA grows, and that it grows with the same culture of keeping it about HEMA and not about something else is again a fine line.
Yeah, that fine line exists, and we're very aware of it. We talk about it regularly. There is nothing wrong with sport. No, there is absolutely nothing wrong with sport, but it is not HEMA. Now, will Black Armory do sporty things? Yes, we will.
Yep.
Will those sporty things get mixed in and diluted and with the HEMA and make some kind of sporty HEMA soup? No, they will not. They will be parallel things. All right. There's modern sword fighting, what we call soft sword, coming out of Russia and Eastern Europe right now, which is a lot of fun. Foam weapons, foam protection. It comes mainly from the armored world and the armored full contact world, the Beord stuff, and whatnot. The Russians just love that and are very, very scary at it. But we are going to be developing that. It's great. It's awesome. You can get 7-year-olds doing this, and maybe feeding into HEMA, maybe not, maybe feeding into something else, right? But they remain separate.
And you can support people in their respective passions, which is an amazing thing to be able to do. And
let things play out. But we, as HEMA practitioners for Thomas and HEMA researchers for me, are adamant about, but you don't do. I mean, we've got enough frog DNA in the sources. We're not going to do it with the equipment or the business. No, those things stay separate.
You used my analogy. That's my analogy for HEMA is the stealing from Jurassic Park. To make a dinosaur, you have to plug in some of that dino
Just showing you that I've done my research.
Yeah, there we go. Kind of last thing to speak about. You mentioned it a couple times. I wanted to kind of give you the opportunity to talk about it.
Sure.
Based in France, really supporting Europe. Now coming over to the U.S., which is exciting because now us U.S. types get access to this.
Sure.
Can you speak a little bit to how you guys are being made available, what is available, how people can go about getting it?
Yeah. Let me start with, you may have noticed from my accent that I don't have the very French accent. Yeah, I mean, I did spend a lot of time in the U.S. I grew up here, French American family, and grew up here. I've been back in France now for a long time. I left the U.S. about almost 15 years ago. So that bridge exists, and I'm back and forth, you know, on a regular basis. We have a lot of, we've got customers all over the world now, which is really exciting. I mean, we ship to New Zealand and Australia, South Africa, and North America, and even South America, all the way to Argentina now. But we've got a lot of customers in the US and Canada. Some of them order directly from us for most of our catalog items. The jacket is distributed in the US and can be easily found and ordered here locally. So with easier shipping and local shipping and easier communication than the 6-hour time difference and whatnot. So that's easy to find. Other items, we are either, well, you know, something like this, you know, synthetic axe head. Yeah. Great, buy the synthetic axe head. It's not going to cost an arm and a leg to ship over. It's small, it's light, and whatever. Something like this is more expensive to send. We will have saddles also in distribution here, some of the larger items. The weapons, the steel weapons, is an interesting and different relationship. Most of our weapons are made in Hungary by the same smith that's working for Purple Heart. Okay. Now, we have, the way we both work is Natasha and Purple Heart are designing their weapons the way they want them and having him make them that way, or that workshop make them that way. We are doing the same thing. We've been working with the Hungarian workshop for almost 2 years now. It is not their catalog that we are buying in. We are designing and having them forge it to our specifications, which basically means that same workshop, different feathers at Purple Heart, different feathers at Black Armoury, which is great because a feather is a very personal thing, or feathers, or arming swords, or Type 14s, or whatever. So that is a different situation in the sense that Purple Heart is distributing, or manufacturing and distributing those steel weapons in the U.S. We have an agreement with them and with the workshop that we sell in the U.S., but we don't stock in the U.S. Okay. For co-opetition reasons.
Right. Yep. Okay. Well, Anthony, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm really excited that you guys are branching out and expanding.
So are we.
And again, I hope we get to have more communications in the future, and we get to talk a bit more.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. Oh, and the last thing that I want to say to the people that are going to be watching this is, again, we are extraordinarily open to comments, suggestion, criticism, as little as possible, please. But requests. You know, hey, I want a 16th century halberd in the synthetics. Okay, great. Well, we are working on one, by the way. But okay, yeah, we can think about that. We can do things, and it's surprising how often we can launch a new line with relatively few pieces. You know, a new synthetic line. If we're sure that we can sell 40 or 50 of the things, it's worth making a mold. Okay. For example. So let us know what you want. That's how we get things done.
Awesome. Well, you heard it. Flood his inbox. Now, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Have a wonderful rest of Longpoint and safe travels back home.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.